we go. The first ban on both sides. Druids, we're back in reality, back in Druid land, back in Spreading Plague. But yeah, of course, when I say that New Zealand are looking favoured, that's with all of the information, including the pick order, which we will come to in a little bit. But they were seeming very confident. Jack Attack in particular, I get the feeling he generally is just a very confident person.
I'd agree there.
But I was talking to Patra, you know, how are you feeling? And she was just saying, yeah, you know, it should be good. And Jack Attack just walks over and goes, yeah, it's fine. We're favoured in pick order. We're going to win.
Yeah. And the bans do make sense there at the start with a double Druid ban, like we saw in the previous series that we were casting.
This is Jack Attack on the Control Priest. Again, it's Mind Blast Control Priest, just like earlier.
Yeah, and this is a matchup that we haven't seen all too much throughout the vast majority of the group stages, the first stage of the global games. Well, it was Aggro Mage.
Yeah, exactly.
With the one-mana Mana Worm.
But Mana Worm is no more. Yeah. And now it's all about that Murloc Tidecooler.
Yes, that is definitely leading the charge here. We see, well, some Murloc mages, a couple of control mages. From China, maybe we'll get to see their, Quest Aluneth OTK mage. It's a very, very weird deck indeed.
I hope we get to see.
It's been getting the job done, I suppose. But for this matchup against Control Priest, we were talking about it. It's going to be a bit of an interesting one because it's a lot more board focused now. Right. You run so many minions in the deck now. You have to cut all the secret package, the Arcane Intellect, all that. It's just running a lot of minions, a little bit of burst, and a Luna in the hope that you get them. Were played. That didn't matter. It still wasn't enough removal against these very minion-heavy decks as we are ready to get underway with this Murloc Mage against the Control Priest.
I cannot believe that we have a meta where Murloc Raider is in a deck that's being played in the HGG finals at BlizzCon.
I knew it. I lost to that tutorial so many times. It was the most overpowered deck in history. Murloc Raider is just too strong.
It's just bizarre to look at this Murloc. It feels like I'm looking at a tutorial.
Like, and that was a hand that you could very much consider keeping. That was a 1-2-3 curve. If they don't have Wild Pyro or Dustbreaker, you just kill them.
New Zealand's hand, though, not looking too hot at the moment. Mind Blast, not the spell that they're looking for. No Dustbreaker, no Pyromancer, no Cleric in sight. They're going to have to play very defensively as Tempo Bluegill Warrior comes down.
Yeah, Blitzstone here clearly indicating that the fear he has of cards, like you said, Wild Pyro, Northshire Cleric as well. Like Murloc Raider, there's a reason that 1-mana 2/1s in Hearthstone historically have not been tier 1 cards. You need something more efficient at fighting for board, which is now 1-mana 1/3s. Right. It's Crystallizer, Diamol are good enough to be played, whereas Murloc Raider, you're showing here exactly why it's not being played too often, because he threw it. He had a 1-drop on 1 and mulliganed it away.
But Jack Attack currently has no way to deal with the Bluegill Warrior. He can't actually deal 1 damage now this turn. So it's going to be dealing another 2 next turn, and Blitzchung is going to be in a fantastic position once he drops Nightmare Amalgam. That's a 3/4. That doesn't die to Dustbreaker. Yeah. And then he's got the Megasaur to follow up with. This is looking a little scary for New Zealand.
Really tough choice there as well of the Shadow Visions, where I was, you would typically expect against any kind of a board-faced deck to see Psychic Scream. Just clear up the whole board, even if they have the adaptation for Death Rattles or Divine Shield, anything like that. You clear it off 100% of the time, completely clear board. But this shows how it is not only a very board-focused deck, it's an incredibly aggressive deck, this Murloc Mage. If they were to stick Gentle Megasaur or a Murloc War Leader, you're going to die way before you have time to throw down the Psychic Scream.
What do they do this turn? It's just hopeless. Just drop Acolyte of Pain.
Yeah, I imagine they'll probably end up just playing the Acolyte, because Wild Pyro, you need it to do something a little bit more impactful, I think. Maybe if you can draw a Powered Shield off the top, maybe they just ignore the Acolyte of Pain as well if they're feeling incredibly aggressive. And then you can just draw a whole bunch of cards in the meanwhile.
I can hear Murloc noises in my head. I look up and there's these 2 life-size, well, larger than life-size Murlocs just by the casting area.
Yeah, you'll be glad to hear you are not going completely insane. Those are real Murlocs.
They're real Murlocs?
Real Murlocs. Yeah, I'm losing my mind here. I am going insane. As the Dustbreaker pickup is a really fantastic way to start clearing off this board. Even if it doesn't immediately get rid of everything, just being able to mop up with the Wild Pyro afterwards is the dream.
Wild Pyromancer Coin Mind Blast is looking like it will do the rest of this job. Jack Attack will be taking some damage in the meantime, but maybe then they can stabilize.
Maybe.
I mean, yeah, Stargazer Luna is in Blitzchung's hand. He's got the Book of Spectres to start digging through the deck. New Zealand are in a rough spot.
And this really is just the big decision for them, isn't it? Do they go Dustbreaker this turn, or do they go Wild Pyro this turn? I think they're coming to the conclusion that a 3-3 on board is just better.
Yeah.
You don't get any, like, there's no chance that the Wild Pyromancer gets more procs next turn.
Right, I mean, if they're playing Pyromancer here, what are they doing? Just Pyromancer Coin? Then the Nightmare Amalgam survives the Dustbreaker the following turn. So Pyromancer Coin Mind Blast, but then they end up with nothing on the board. This is awkward.
Yeah, it allows them to develop
Cleric heal.
the North Shore as well.
That is not one of the plays that I'd spotted. I like it, but there's still 10 damage on the board, including the hero power.
Well, like this, looking at the board, like if you just ignore what's on their side of the board, then it gets a bit more awkward because Dustbreaker doesn't even kill off the 4/4 Amalgam. But when you take into the fact that they are actually going to have to clear off these minions, lest you just trade in with them, Dustbreaker does become a little bit more appealing here, and maybe it means you don't even have to go for Dustbreaker, because by healing up the Wild Pyromancer, the hero power can't take it out anymore from the mage. So maybe they can just go for Mass Dispel, Power Word Shield if they draw that off the top.
The future is ours.
Oh boy.
But here Hong Kong are realizing what their opponent was likely deciding between and playing beautifully around it. This is such a good spot here from Hong Kong, and this is the punish from New Zealand. By going greedy and not getting the Dustbreaker when it was good enough, they are now being punished pretty hard.
This Dustbreaker only deals with one of those minions. And now Luna, depending on what is drawn now, it's not the best minion. Obviously something that cost 1 mana would have been ideal in this situation. It's not bad by any means.
And this is a difficult decision that often comes up in this deck. Also similar to when you're playing with Divine Favor. Do you draw the maximum amount of cards possible and not develop on board as effectively? Or do you get a little bit of extra board development, the extra 1 attack on the Tidecaller and give up the immediate card draw? I think it makes sense, and it has worked out very nicely indeed here for Blitz.
It has. However, Wild Pyromancer Mass Dispel will deal with most of the damage that's on the board. It will leave only the 2 Murlocs alive. It will leave only 4 damage alive on the board. That's okay, I think, New Zealand. And that's even better than the Mass Dispel.
This is the easiest turn of their life now. That Divine Hymn is such a big pickup. And this is not a facet of what their play originally was intended to do. By playing these, the Wild Pyromancer first, only by drawing the second Wild Pyromancer and the second and the copy of Divine Hymn would they have the chance to even deal with this board at all. And that is such an unbelievably impactful draw, turning this game around so drastically. And now, because of the fact that Murloc Mage is so more minion-based, so much less spell-based, the ability to come back into this game from Blitzchung is quite severely diminished.
It's difficult. I definitely wouldn't count them out just yet, though. The fact that the Pyromancers on the board is awkward because they are going to want to deal with that. If it weren't, they could just go Nightmare Amalgam, Murloc Raider, Cold Light Seer, and just create the biggest board possible. Are they going to go for that anyway?
No, they've got to pick this.
But still, Jack Attack may not be able to deal with these, and the next turn War Leader plus Cold Light Seer would do a lot of work.
I mean, I imagine he's probably just going to be quite happy to lead off with a Cabal Shadow Priest. This doesn't really warrant a Psychic Scream quite yet.
No, Psychic Scream is incredibly valuable. And unlike Odd Paladin, Murloc Mage can only can only go so far in terms of resources. They have no magic button that creates 2 1/1s every turn.
They do, however, have a Luneth and the Book of Spectres as well, which is a card that people have been trying to make really work for a long time now. And it seems to have finally found its home in Murloc Mage. Just an incredibly powerful refill tool, which is exactly what they will need if the Psychic Scream is to come down.
As long as it doesn't just discard both Fireballs and Frostbolt.
Oh.
You can't build a deck for this card with no spells whatsoever. It's just not a realistic ask. Yep. As you predicted, Cabal Shadow Priest is going to come down. Again, remove 2 damage off the board. Create a board of New Zealand's own, which can start to deal with anything Hong Kong plays.
And as good as this is looking for Jack Attack, this turn for Blitzchung is just kind of good. You can go Cold Light Sea and Murloc War Leader Ping. That's a big old board. You made obviously the other way around, to get the health buff. But it gives you a really nice, strong hold onto the board. And even if you're met with the Psychic Scream, which Blitzchung is fully expecting to happen with this play, snap Book of Spectres, refill the board, and try and get that pressure to pull things back in your favor. Oh,
not even going to trade.
Of course not. This is a face deck. This is Blitzchung we're talking about, one of the premier aggro players.
And again, if they are playing around Psychic Scream, then what is the purpose of trading? What does that actually achieve for them?
Good point. I guess the alternatives for Jack Attack here, where he maybe doesn't want to go for Psychic Scream. If we were to see Mass Dispel, that leaves 5 damage on the board after a trade, which isn't that bad. It's definitely worth considering just going with the Mass Dispel instead.
Hovering over the Alexstrasza. Counting damage for the next few turns, I guess. There you go.
Worth considering, but obviously I think I'm letting Cast Division get to me a little bit, where I can see the Book of Spectres in hand.
Right.
New Zealand have no idea that's there. They're thinking this is probably the scariest board we're likely to see for a good long while.
The Cabal Shadow Priest drawn. Seems to be the case quite often, actually, that one of the cards that gets Psychic Screamed in is the first thing drawn. We saw it earlier with Tundra Rhino.
It does seem that way, doesn't it? It's like a perfect social experiment of like positive bias. Oh, this happens every single time.
It only happens every single time when it benefits my opponent.
Exactly. That's just Hearthstone. As once again, a board where you'd quite like to Psychic Scream again. We've seen this so many times with Control Priest, where with these modern aggressive decks, it's not... It's always the potential of what could come. It's not what you actually see on board. It's just knowing they could play Murloc War Leader. In Paladin, they could play Level Up. They could play Fungal Mancer in Zoo. There's always something potentially that could come down, which makes you want to go for your powerful removal that little bit too early.
This second War Leader is going to do a lot of work, though. Buffing both these minions, so that's going to be 8 damage on the board. The Fireball is 6. The Ping is another one after that. Yeah, we're almost there.
And New Zealand will clearly be figuring out breakpoints here. What do we lose to? Double Fireball, they need to hero power. Fireball Frostbolt, they're still all right, so they don't need to hero power. They really want to be cycling through to the better cards in their deck and kind of baiting their opponents into getting as much damage through to face as possible so they can Alexstrasza back up out of range afterwards. Ooh. I think that was a little bit of orange. That is going to do it. The Murloc Mage, with its constant ability to refill the board. Book of Spectres, War Leader, this constant damage closes out the game against Control Priest. This is a massive victory for Hong Kong.
That draw is unbelievable. You know, AKA Wonder told me a few days ago that his dream is to win in the finals by top decking a Fireball. Well, Hong Kong carrying that torch for Spain, I suppose, as they take their first win in this vital series. And that was a really exciting game.
Falling behind on board, run out of stuff, because Warrior does have a tremendous amount of removal. It's what the deck does. So if you're just trying to win the game through Devil Swords, Devil Saw Eggs, and all that early stuff, while it can be explosive, it's often not quite good enough. However, maybe this is good enough for New Zealand.
Yeah, that is a good combination of cards to start a game with. However,
You're not wrong.
is this the type of matchup where you want to make these early plays? Is this the matchup where you want to go egg, Terrascale, Play-Dead?
Oh, it's so good.
It's so
But
tempting.
yeah, it's so tempting. There's so much stuff that just shuts it down. Though, like Super Collider, a bunch of 5/5s line up very poorly against a Super Collider, and you don't have an ooze in hand to be able to deal with it. I imagine we see like a half and half here, where they'll keep the egg and maybe a couple of the Death Rattle activators, but here they're saying, all right, usually you're looking for Katharina, you're looking for Rexar, the real powerhouse cards in this matchup. But this hand is so intensely synergistic, they're just going to smork this game out.
And why not, if they think they've got the opportunity to win it quickly? Because the alternative is having to rely on drawing Deathstalker Rexar, and that is one of the things that can go slightly wrong for the Hunter. If they just fail to apply enough pressure early and then fail to draw the big things like Rexar, like Cube, and then like the Playdeads, it can all go a bit wrong. Katharina is a nice little backup plan for if this early pressure does get dealt with, she can get slammed on turn 8. I believe that they are running a charged Devil Saw in this build. Yes, they are. Rather in the kind of flex Swamp King Dread slot, I guess.
Yeah, we see a lot of different choices being run. Sometimes the Savannah High Main that we saw earlier, as you said, from Bulgaria, the Swamp King Dread.
Oh, they're not running High Main at all here, are they?
Yeah, it's the traditional 4 beasts, I think, is usually what you try and find with the 2 Grizzlies, Crush, and something. I think it was it Calyx recently I saw just playing a 3 beast build, which is an interesting way of going about it, much less consistent, but you don't draw the bad cards from your hand because you don't want to play Charged Devil Saw. It's not a particularly powerful card. You just want to get that damage through to face. So for Ting Tong, finding the Katharina at the start is exactly what he's looking for. And I also think it may very well have influenced his decision to not go Coin Devil Saw Egg here, because that was a real consideration, right? If you go Coin Devil Saw and then Terrascale next turn, that's a good amount of damage that you're putting down onto the board. But going Coin Katharina on turn 7 is probably what this coin is going to be designated for now. And I mean, unless they want to go Coin Playdead, but I would be surprised to see that.
That's some selection of taunts that that Kin got there.
Yeah. No, I guess they could actually go Coin Playdead and then, Terrascale Playdead.
It's looking like a nice curve, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess this does work out nicely. It's there's a big question mark in the middle though now between turns 4, like turns 5, 6, and 7 before you get to Katharina. You're not doing a whole lot with this hand right now.
Just thinking they can kind of play around Super Collider next turn with the positioning of the Terrascale.
Yes,
if
they
they
can.
play the Playdead first and then stick the Terrascale in between some of the 5/5s. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good.
It's good enough just to get some of that damage through early on. But even then, you know, this isn't a board that has that many Death Rattle minions on it. It's just going to have a lot of Devil Saws, which means Brawl or Reckless Flurry would make very quick work of all these Devil Saws. And then New Zealand are left kind of high and dry for a few turns.
Also, having used both Playdeads and the Terrascale Stalker potentially, which are some of the key cards in this matchup. Playing those on Cube later on, that's how they win the game.
Yeah, it is, but I've seen some of my favorite ever games I've seen played with Death Rattle Hunter have been specifically not playing Terrascale Stalker on Cube in this matchup because of mind control tech. You just need to be so careful of not playing 4 minions at once. But here Ting Tong is playing into exactly that, because when you keep this hand, you have to. You can't keep this hand and play around mind control tech when you're keeping 4 Death Rattle activators.
So is it Brawl time? No, it's Super Collider time. And this is fine, actually, because he can hit the rightmost Devil Saw, and it guarantees that there's only 1 5/5 left. Yeah, Kin doesn't really have too much to worry about at the moment.
And now Ting Tong needs to think, well, do you make another Devil Saw here and put the Spider Bomb in between the two of them so that it's a little bit more difficult for the Super Collider to clear it up? That is a lot of damage that you are forcing the Odd Warrior to take. But that generally just doesn't matter that much in this matchup.
Yeah.
You have to have such a ridiculously powerful early game to have any chance of just pushing them out with pressure early on.
I just feel as though he has to hold back at this
Yeah.
point because the play dead again is so vital later on with some of the bigger tools.
And this is why I was advocating at the start a kind of half and half mulligan when you keep the egg,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
one or two of the Death Rattle activators, and throw away a play dead, because you want to find other cards in this matchup. Katharina, you want to find Deathstalker Rexar primarily, obviously Egg, Prince Keleseth as well.
Right.
A great way to get this game rolling, and they just don't have most of those cards now.
But yeah, they kept both play deads and only planned on playing one, in which case, what was the purpose of keeping the second one? Maybe they had planned on playing both and were hoping not to see Super Collider?
Yeah, I think they might have planned on playing both, but they found Katharina as well, and now they want to pull out
Sure.
King Crush or another Grizzly, which makes sense because that's a much more powerful Death Rattle. And it has finally caught up with Kin. He's left without the ability to really mop up this board all too effectively, so needs to make what are some increasingly unimpressive plays here, like just Direhorn Hatchling, which can get munched up pretty easily by the Spider Bomb if New Zealand will wanted to. A nice play as well. Still playing around the mind control tech as much as possible. They only played into it on one of the turns now, I believe. And by trading away the Spider Bomb, they keep the play dead for maybe a Devil Saw or a Katharina as well. Or maybe a Spider Bomb, sorry, or a Katharina.
The game is really slowed down here, and that is to the detriment of the Hunter for the time being. The longer the game goes, well, I was going to say in theory the Warrior wins, but then it depends when Rexar's drawn, I guess.
It very, very much does. It also depends if the Warrior is able to find a respectable answer for Katharina, because at the moment, it doesn't really. Like, Brawl, if you're at a low life total, is not a good enough answer against Katharina. True. You're just going to be hit with a King Crush, or from where they're sat, maybe a charged Devil Saw afterwards. You just take too much damage.
There's only 2 beasts left for Ting Tong.
Yeah.
And a very real chance that he draws one of the other 2 before he can play Katharina. There's a chance he draws both.
And again, lovely positioning with the egg here. This maybe is one of the biggest reasons to keep the explosive egg starting hand, because the premium way to remove stuff with Odd Warrior now is Super Collider.
Yep.
You take a ridiculous amount of damage while doing it, but you don't care because you have the hero power to pull yourself back up. And that egg in the middle with some really nice positioning from Ting Tong is just making this impossible for Kin to effectively deal with this board. So again, it's just minion development, trying to put stuff in the way, which is not a long-term solution, because eventually Kin is going to run out of minions.
So, 23 health for Hong Kong. Okay, they're going to go ahead and Hunter's Mark in immediately. I like that. I was looking at the Spider Bomb and thinking, is it worth going Spider Bomb play dead?
Yeah.
Just to push this 8 damage through to the face? But Hunter's Mark, and I guess even Ziliax, works pretty well.
Well, they're just really trying to play around mind control tech, I think, at the moment. Because especially going into turn 8, that opens up a really nice 3-drop, 5-drop play, where we could see mind control tech Elise, mind control tech into, I don't know, maybe a Dynamatic, if that could be made to work for Kin. Because even if the egg is stolen, that opens up the Super Collider to actually start clearing off the board. And it is just so at the core of New Zealand's game plan, this strategy. When do they play around mind control tech, and when do they say, we just can't do it anymore?
Unity, precision, perfection.
And here they're saying, we're going to give you a relatively unimpressive board to steal with the mind control tech. If you steal a 3-2, that's really not that bad, because next turn, slam the Katharina and really start pushing some damage. Exactly.
So, Brawl still available to Kin. No mind control tech. Shield Block, Reckless Flurry clears everything apart from the 5-5 that comes out of the egg. Well, he could Super Collider the egg first, then go Shield Block, or sorry, Super Collider one of the minions next to the egg, the Grizzly. Then go Shield Block, Reckless Flurry. That would clear everything.
It's not bad. Again, though, you have to be expecting Katharina. Like, the card on the far left at this point I imagine Kin will be expecting that to be a Katharina.
Right.
Because it wasn't played earlier, which means it's probably not Rexar, because that would have been played as soon as possible. But it was kept.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was a card that was kept off the mulligan. And there are very few cards that could be. Maybe they've got the read that it's a Playdead or a Terrascale Stalker.
It's funny how, like, when you have a game plan and you change that game plan... Yeah, that works too. And you change your game plan after the mulligan, it could mess up with your opponent's read of your hand. Like when you go so many levels in to the extent that the pro players do, Hearthstone gets pretty complicated.
Was that the best way to do it? You go... this way lets you develop the Grizzly, actually. Okay, yeah. This is really nice, actually, because if you ignore playing the taunt, the way we were looking at, where you attack in first, then go shield block, Reckless Flurry was better, but that only leaves you 2 mana left over to go for a hero power, which is good. But setting up this taunt protects you from King Crush, and that is a beautiful read of the situation from Kin, realizing you are likely to be hit with a Charged Devilsaur or a King Crush next turn. Because if your opponent has Katharina, they're playing Katharina. Yeah,
that's very smart. These Hunter's Marks for New Zealand aren't doing much at all. Okay, so with this, New Zealand guarantees a King Crush next turn, because if they don't get it from the Katharina, they can play dead.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah, this is a good setup.
And what can Kin do about this Charged Devilsaur? He could Faceless it and just charge back into it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't believe there's a way of removing this.
What now?
It's crazy.
There's nothing off Dr. Boom that you could make work unless you got the Zap Cannon and then attacked in with your weapon as well.
Or the Microbots.
Or the Microbots, yeah.
2 out of 5.
Probably not worth considering. You really want to save this swing of the old Super Collider for a little bit more value. So I think you're probably right. It's looking like a Faceless Manipulator, maybe with a shield block first to try and find the shield slam.
Wow, even going to Zola it.
Really?
Of all of the cards you'd want an extra copy of in your hand, Charged Devilsaur? Okay.
That is a very interesting play, as now for Ting Tong, I would have to imagine it is finally Katharina time. King Crush going to be hitting the board. And the Playdead that we were talking about from a while ago, saved right from the start, is coming up pretty big here. Although he's actually wondering if he should bother, because if it gets removed, you kind of want the Death Rattle.
Well, yeah. I figured the reason he hovered over Playdead is because he'd already seen it was Witchwood Grizzly that was summoned. Because I don't really see the benefit in summoning both of them, because then if the board gets cleared, Katharina doesn't proc.
I think here, though, what Ting Tong's realizing is, I said if the board is cleared. The conversation they're having now is, how is the board cleared? What combination of cards completely clears up the board? If they'd gone for Playdead and Brawl leaves up, like any of them, it would have to be exactly Witchwood Grizzly survives for New Zealand to not be dead.
Well, Dr. Being Reckless Flurry would have been clearing the board,
fair point, yeah.
No, it wouldn't have dealt with the Witchwood Grizzly.
Yeah, there'd still be something in play.
And then Kim would have no armor, and Ting Tong would just win. So yeah, okay.
I guess this does make sense, though. It's just the bane of Control Warriors since the dawn of time is these Death Rattle minions, be it Cairn back in the day, or Savannah Highmane, or now the obvious Katharina is just such a pain to deal with. And that does mean now the removal is struggling to be found. It would have to be Hero Power Reckless Flurry here, or a Brawl, and pray that there's no minion left inside, that it's just the other Witchwood Grizzly is in hand. Yeah, he's going for the Brawl. You can't remove your armor with Reckless Flurry, or you just die way too much at the time.
Playing the Playdead last turn would have lost to this, but...
And that is going to be the game.
Yeah.
Pretty swiftly closed out here by Ting Tong. Their style of play here, of going for a very aggressive start, not the usual way of playing this matchup, has worked out beautifully for them. It meant that at all times they were not falling behind. And then they didn't even need the Deathstalker Rexar because they just won through tempo. It's not the traditional route, but it worked very well.
The pressure just kept on going as New Zealand take the second game of the series, tying it up 1-1 with Morris the Priest's favor.
So that is a pretty decent hand for Hong Kong to be rolling with there. The Doomsayer, man, that has just been the bane of Murlocs since day one of Hearthstone.
Has to be played very early, though. Like, once there's a Murloc or two on the board, how out of control the Murlocs can get does mean that the Doomsayers don't tend to survive for long.
Thankfully, it only costs 2 mana crystals and therefore can be played relatively early.
Ah. The key thing about Doomsayer as well, and this is something we've been saying for years now, is it's not just that it clears the board, but it clears the board at the start of your turn, allowing you to then spend the mana crystals, you to put your own minions on the board then, and then the Murlocs have to contest with that. So the little tempo switcher effect that the Doomsayer has is very powerful.
Into our strength.
And it'll be interesting to see how Shy plays it, because if Mage just plays Grimscale Oracle on turn 1, does he just slam Doomsayer? I would definitely imagine no, now that the plated beetle has been found as well, to be able to ramp up the amount of damage there. But for Mage, this is a really nice starting hand. It's no Tidecaller, but it's good enough to get the damage rolling a little bit.
Both of these hands are looking good.
Time runs out on me.
It's just a 1-1 on the board. Like, Hong Kong are going to have to decide, do they want to play this Doomsayer now? And they kind of have to, because if they don't play it now, when is it ever going to proc?
Oh, well, you think you're playing the Doomsayer there?
I think he had to consider it.
I think the plated beetle here is just too good.
But yeah, Beetle contests with this so nicely that it is going to prevent Mage from getting too much stuff on the board.
Like, 2 cards were kept in the mulligan, and neither of them was Tidecaller, which you would obviously play over the Grimscale Oracle.
Right.
And so I think you can have a pretty good expectation that one of them is Rockpool, because that's a very, very powerful Murloc card to keep. It's kind of the core of the Murloc strategy at the moment.
Yep.
And therefore, this is a brilliant play into Rockpool Hunter.
And if New Zealand coin out Murloc War Leader here and make that trade, then Doomsayer is going to be pretty miserable for Mage to see.
I imagine they do go coin Murloc War Leader. I'd be surprised to see anything else, just because you need to start locking down the board here. And it's unlikely they have the Doomsayer. Hong Kong is only running the 1 Doomsayer. It's very, very unlikely to see 2 Doomsayers in this deck anymore.
I wish we had players named the same as the class more often. It makes it very easy to cast.
That's true. We're told trying to refer to it as the players more, but with Mage, you just you can't go wrong.
Well, Mage has gone wrong here, as that Doomsayer is going to do its job, taking out a Murloc War Leader, setting up Shy nicely for next turn. Shy even has the Ooze to deal with a Luneth.
But then the other benefit you were talking about with Doomsayer, in that it gives you initiative onto the board, the freedom to develop.
Right.
This is the awkward thing now for Shy.
Yeah.
Does he just jam the Acidic Swampoos onto the board?
He can't do that. Surely he can't do that.
It's like, you have to develop onto the board, though. Maybe they have a Luneth, but I think what's more likely to happen is you just get obliterated on the board. They just start to overrun you, and they very possibly won't play into Defile. This is a Murloc deck, so it's obviously very low curving, but the amount of 1 health minions isn't that high. I think you can quite easily play around the Defile with this deck, especially with the health gain effect of Rockpool and Tideseer.
What about double Defile, though? Like, genuinely having the second Defile there means that essentially the first one procs for 2. That's probably almost always a full board clear.
I think even then, though, with the way this hand works, like, yes, you get 1 full Defile, 1 full clear with double Defile.
Right.
Is that good enough? You need to start populating the board, because that is how you beat these board-based aggressive decks. They'll just keep refilling turn and turn again with Book of Spectres, a Luneth, Luna. But if you dominate the board and start value trading them, or even going aggressive with the Giants, which could happen at some point, that's when you start to really lock out the game. And so I like this play from Shy. It will, I said I like this play from Shy, it will be punished. The fact that a Luneth is actually there is pretty miserable for Hong Kong.
Yep, it's going to be difficult for Hong Kong to survive for too long once this Luneth comes down. I mean, New Zealand do still have a limitation on mana at the moment. Like, they may not even be able to play 3 cards per turn. Well, they should be able to. The Murlocs do tend to be quite cheap.
Like, they're just losing board. That one choice to play the Ooze, which meant he could clear off the extra minions here, start pulling back the board. We can see Gen Greymane next turn, curve into Lich King, curve into Bone Mare if something sticks, and start really pushing onto the board. I think this is a really great recognition from Shy that usually they don't have the Luneth, in which case, brilliant, I'm dominating the board. Even if they do have a Luneth, though, I'm still just winning the board here.
That's not ideal at all. Having to fireball a minion with this deck feels so bad. Not even buffing up the Murloc Raider so that it can't get value traded. The Homunculus still just destroys it with little effort. And like you said, Gen Greymane is looking just fine this turn. Hooked Reaver not even procced yet.
Yeah, I reckon there's a chance we see Spellbreaker Sun Fury instead on this turn. Over the Gen Greymane, it softens up the board a little bit and just goes wider, which is very powerful because, again, Hong Kong don't want to play double Defile here. They want to play Defile in like a last-ditch effort to reclaim the board. If they can stay ahead and set up for a very likely chance of hitting Bone Mare, that is the absolute dream, and I think it's just going to work. Although Mage can actually clear off the board here.
Yeah, this
with Bluegill Frostbolt ping, as miserable as it sounds.
This is a pretty good turn, actually.
What to do? What to do?
Like, even just Frostbolting the Spellbreaker and it's just fine. Can leave the Sun Fury alive. I don't think it's worth putting damage into. Yeah, it's going to make a value trade, but at the end of the day, New Zealand need to actually finish the job at some point.
Yeah, they've got to think about Defile, though. Like, by playing the Bluegill, do they play into it more? I don't think so. I don't think there's, any way that they can stop a Defile from happening on this board. And so because of the Luneth, I think they probably just end up playing Bluegill and shipping it face. Because, like, I think the way it currently stands, the only way they're winning this game in the vast majority of cases is a Luneth. Because this, the Warlock very, very likely has the ability to play Lich King or Bone Mare or Defile or Hooked Reaver in the next couple turns. There's so many ways to deal with what's currently in play. So I honestly wouldn't have hated the Bluegill to come down there for New Zealand.
Well, that Lich King cannot be dealt with this turn, so as you were saying, the only way Mage even has a chance to win this one is the Luneth. We were saying before that the Mage should be okay in this matchup. The Mage should be great in this matchup, but Shy managed to defend himself very nicely in the early game, and I think that Doomsayer did the majority of the work. And the Ooze, like you said.
Absolutely. I think it was really nice play by Hong Kong. And also just, as we were talking about, the transition from Aggro Mage to Murloc Mage has just been miserable here for New Zealand. They have not been able to get the damage through to phase. It's all been minion focused, which has been so easily dealt with by Shy, with the Doomsayer curving perfectly into the rest of their minions. Here just going nice and wide to set up for a Gul'dan Resurrection on the Void, on the Hooked Reaver as well. They don't even care about getting the +3/+3. Now they're left with a hand that's literally all Murlocs plus a Megasaur. That's probably the happiest Megasaur I've ever seen in my life.
Murlocs just making their way around all of the different classes, aren't they? We're going to get Murloc Priest at some point?
That was a thing. One of the Danish pirate boys brought it to like Italy, I think. It was. There has been definitely one. There's definitely been one Murloc Priest at a tournament at some point, at a tour stop, I remember it.
Did they win any series?
I don't think so.
Oh.
Yeah. Maybe I'm misremembering. If any of the Danish pirate boys are watching, I think I remember one of you guys brought it somewhere. But yeah, I will agree. Murlocs are doing the rounds still somehow.
Okay, now, is there a world in which New Zealand just go for Poisonous and try and deal with the Lich King using that right now? I think they just have to, but they didn't get it.
Yeah.
Wind Fury, Taunt, Health, they're all entirely useless against this board.
I think that's a good recognition. Stealth there was kind of the out. Stealth and there being no Defile was the only real way they were going to be able to pull this one back. Because still, Shy does not have to go for Hellfire and Defile. He can just go trade, play the Gul'dan to pull everything back, or Bone Mare push everything phase. There's just no real bad way to do this, I think. You just do such a good job of locking out this game. And now, because of his domination of the board, even when he finally loses the board, or if, I should say, if he eventually loses the board, Hellfire Double Defile is a board clear every single time.
Yep. I mean, they have 3 Death Knight cards. Like, Mage has no idea what those cards are.
Yeah.
They could all be Death and Decay for as far as, as Mage knows. New Zealand looking like they're going to be losing this one. And that is very bad news for them in terms of this overall series.
I don't know. I think I might have been forgetting how good a Luneth is, because this, I agree it's not looking good for them right now, but I don't think it's over. If we were to see them somehow hitting stealth or plus health, or somehow just forcing their opponent to make a big removal turn and then developing again because of the power of a Luneth, they are still in with a shot of pushing for lethal. Although I agree, it's not likely to happen at this point.
It's a good board, though.
It's a very good board.
But yeah, Hellfire plus Defile on its own will clear everything up. Again, New Zealand can sort of restock the board, but these minions are getting a bit on the expensive side now, which sounds ridiculous when I'm looking at 2 and 3 mana minions, but...
When you have a Luneth, you just want the lowest curve you can possibly get.
Oh, exactly. You want the 1-drops and the 2-drops exclusively.
And here we see still holding back on any kind of removal card, because, again, why would they need to? They're still just ahead on the board, and they know this is not... It's not even like it's not a control mage. It's not an aggro mage. It doesn't have the primordial glyph to hit a Flame Strike, a Meteor, or a Blizzard. It doesn't have anywhere near enough of the good old removal cards to be clearing off and fighting back on this board, which has always been the weakness of Murloc decks. If you're not ahead, you're losing. You have to stay ahead at all points of the game.
Second Fireball hitting a minion this game. Gul'dan sitting there just healing up every single turn.
Yeah.
And this is looking like it's pretty much Mage's final push. That's the second Gentle Megasaur.
More. I must have more.
And still a Luneth demanding more here and trying to keep New Zealand in the game here, but again, I keep coming back to it because of Hong Kong's resistance to play their removal spells, using their minions to dominate the board, and the hero power as well. They've just left themselves in a position where even if they start to lose the board, they have that comeback.
Shy just trying to work out which is the best way to deal with all of this, which is the most efficient. Going to use the first Defile. 1 damage off of dealing with the Murloc. Wow, I mean, the sure, why not? I mean, this Death Knight card is particularly good in Even Warlock, and
oh my god,
that's why.
Oh, that's so sick.
No taunts, but Hong Kong just don't need them. Their health, they've still got 29 health.
And a Luneth is showing power overwhelming here for Mage, as it will just be starting to fatigue him in the next few turns, which will mean a very nice, quick way for Shy to completely destroy the board this one time, and then after that follow up by not even really having to do anything, because New Zealand's just out of threats. As long as he can deal with this board, which he obviously can with the Defile left remaining to him, I think that is just going to be New Zealand's out of ways to win the game, which is massive. Such an important victory here for Hong Kong. Winning with their own Murloc Mage and then defeating their opponent's Murloc Mage.
These Murloc Mage matches have been really interesting. I am quite excited to see what happens with this deck moving forwards. Winning unfavorables and losing favorables.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I guess you can just go Hellfire. He doesn't even need to go for Defile, but whatever. There's always a board clear here. It's difficult to lose this game now for Hong Kong.
Can even Demonic Project if he wanted to reduce the amount of Murlocs in New Zealand's hand even further. There's the concede. Hong Kong take their second game of the series. They are 1 win away from qualifying to the semi-finals of the Hearthstone Global Games at BlizzCon.
I've really liked Hong Kong's play so far, I have to be honest. It's just been very, very consistently strong throughout, both with aggressive and controlling decks. I think their knowledge, their extreme knowledge of aggro decks with Blitzchung on their team as well heading the way, leads to not only strong aggro play, but strong anti-aggro play. They know the weaknesses of it. They're destroying it from the inside out, and it's working fantastically for them.
Again, a team that we've underrated.
Win this matchup.
I think that it's one of those matchups where Glacial Shard is particularly key, because that coming in early, preventing the Hench Clan from dealing the damage, preventing the face weapon from hitting multiple times. That can make a big difference in stalling and allowing the Shadowwalk Shaman to then get a big Volcano or a big Lightning Storm that's actually worth playing, because the Glacial Shard has stalled out the game.
And I suppose I should say as well, as I often do with Shadowwalk Shaman, is that it is not only about the removal. It's not a pure removal control deck. It can also function as just a deck that curves out, very similarly to Ike Good Shaman sometimes. If you just go Keleseth into Acolyte into Chain Gang, you're just going to win board against Odd Rogue. Like, Odd Rogue is not that good at dominating the board with its minions, so if you're putting down a lot of stats on the board, they might start to fall down with the help of something like a Hex or an Earthshock along the way to pull things back in your favor. And that is definitely what New Zealand is going to be looking for first and foremost. I would be very unsurprised to see them keep cards like Hex, maybe an Earthshock as well. But just curving out is also a very strong path to victory in this matchup.
I was really confused as to why I just heard a Murloc again in my head, but I think this time it was the hero.
Possibly.
It must be the Shaman here. Otherwise,
There's Murlocs everywhere.
Otherwise, I actually am losing it now. I'm going to go to sleep and dream of Murlocs tonight. Okay, thank goodness. Okay.
Will survive.
Well, 3-1 drops and Hench Clan is looking like the start that Hong Kong want.
This hand looks like, I can just hear Crystallize's diary now, like, day 33. They still haven't realized I'm not a mole. As they beautifully play it first, just in case they get down to 5 health before they play the rest of them who can't play. But this hand for New Zealand, looking pretty good. I liked the mulligan from Hong Kong. Obviously, the Hench Clan Thug is exactly what you're looking for, because the only real answer to it early on is a Hex, which you would very happily throw down as the Shadowwalk Shaman player, or maybe an Earthshock, but that's not that good of a piece of removal. They've still got a 3-3 that they're going to be smacking you about the head with. So I like that mulligan a lot. And then the Volcano for Patra. Again, I think just good understanding of the matchup. You do want to be curving out, but you're not going to throw away your premium removal card.
Again, I like the idea of early Glacial Shards to stall out into a Volcano turn, but there's no Glacial Shard present. Gluttonous Ooze, perfect, playing into the Hench Clan Thug turn. That really does slow Hong Kong down, as they're going to have to consider going a dagger up 1-drop again, as if they just drop Hench Clan Thug, it gets traded into by Gluttonous Ooze.
And man, oh man, was this Gluttonous Ooze annoying for Loosefield here. Unable to just go Thug on curve to be able to start really amping up the damage. They have to just spend another turn playing out their minions, playing out the dagger. And that means that the curve from Patra can become very strong. Saronite, Chain Gang, Life Drinker, whatever they want here to start dominating the board. This is exactly what I was talking about as what you want to do in this matchup. What do you think about Life Drinker over Chain Gang there? That was a surprisingly difficult choice, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the only advantage I can see really is that the 3-3 body trades better against Crystallizer. However, the upsides of Saronite Chain Gang having 2 taunts on the board, that does seem like a pretty large difference here, especially now we're seeing the Captain Greenskin play. Patra now has nothing on the board. She's going to have to go... Well, I mean, Volcano, I guess, is okay this turn.
And well, this is a really interesting, and I find it a very, very interesting facet of all control decks that have the ability to curve as well. I'm talking about decks like Control Priest with their Twilight Drakes, Shadowwalk Shaman here with their Saronite Chain Gang, is you never want to play your best minions before you think you're going to be removing anyway. Like, Patria, I think, was thinking on turn 4, I could play Chain Gang as the stronger minion in terms of stats, but there's a really good chance I play Volcano next turn anyway, and I don't want to play my best minion into that. I want to save that for the refill afterwards, and it didn't work out because the Volcano wasn't worth it here in Patria's opinion, but I still like the idea of saving it back for after you go for the big board clear.
It's gonna have to just be Volcano now coming up. Yeah. The problem is that when you do play Volcano, that overload train starts rolling, and you end up being in the position where you're overloading every single turn just to try and stay on the board, or keep the opponent off of the board, rather.
Yeah, again, a relatively difficult turn there for Patria, as we could have seen Earthshock, Manatide, Hero Power, but just because of the threat of another Cold Blood coming down, Fungal Mancer, maybe the Cobalt Scalebane that I believe we see in Hong Kong's deck list as well. A little bit too much could have gone wrong by not clearing off the board. So I like just starting to run the opponent out of resources, hope they don't have a big development onto the board, and then try and populate the board yourself next turn.
Myra's Unstable Element drawn by Lewisfield. Certainly not looking like he's going to want to play that anytime soon, but at some point after the next few turns, after his hand has dried up a bit, that card could make all the difference.
It could indeed. I had a Miracle Rogue play Myra's Unstable Element against me on turn 5 today after shuffling 6 spiders into the deck.
Did it go well?
No, I won. It was a really bad idea.
Did it just burn all the spiders?
Yeah. It was really stupid. Oh, 0 mana Electra is very nice, I think.
Yeah, in this matchup, it's looking particularly good, whether they want to play it with the Healing Rain. If they get desperate, they can play it with Volcano, but I don't think that's going to be necessary.
Well, just the 8 mana swing turn of Volcano, Electra, Healing Rain will pretty much always destroy the board and heal them back up to full.
I'd just like to say, Patria is doing a great job of getting these taunt totems.
Yeah, I suppose you're right.
I mean, it's what she wants in this matchup. She wants to maintain as high a health total as possible.
Round of applause for Patria rolling taunt totems, everybody.
Wow. So this is a 1 health over Volcano range, I believe. So,
yeah.
There's still Volcano Earthshock.
Yeah, so probably not worth the Electra Volcano is what I'm hearing here.
No, again, I think Electra Healing Rain is looking like the way to go a little later.
And I like this a lot from Hong Kong, of just the player just throwing as much stuff onto the board this turn as possible. That was one of the lowest value Valspines it's possible to have, but just go for it, because you're going to be playing Myras very likely. Like, in the games where you don't win with this board, you have to play Myras to win, because your redevelopment isn't going to be strong enough. So let's bait out that Volcano or that Lightning Storm that they maybe have, and then just go off with Myras on the next turn.
It's very likely, that the Myras is going to be the play next turn, so one way or another, this game isn't going to go on for much longer. With the Hench Clan surviving, that's an Earthshock target. Yep, time to go. Do you think well, with the Re-Dagger, I guess you can make a somewhat mana efficient play this turn without Myras.
Yeah, like you could actually consider just holding back on it on this turn. Yeah, I think I like the play of the 2-1, because that just pushes a little bit of extra damage on this turn. And you do want as many cards as possible, because if they play Healing Rain, you need that value. That one extra card you get could make all the difference. And this is a pretty good hand, actually, to be getting off of the Myras. Edwin with a few cheap cost cards. No Cold Bloods to be found, but the Leroy Jenkins as well is extra burst. This is just a really high value hand.
2 Vicious Fledglings, both Volcanoes have been played.
too soon.
And Patra is going to be struggling because due to the fact that this is such a high value hand, not just a high burst hand, Hong Kong have got themselves in a situation where Healing Rain is not going to be winning the game for New Zealand. They need removal. It is going to have to be from New Zealand. Lightning Storm found pretty soon, I think, for them to have a chance. Well, maybe 2 Healing Rains will be able to get that. That is a lot of healing.
The equivalent of 3 Healing Rains. Thanks to the Electra.
I mean the equivalent of 4 Healing Rains after you Electra back the grumble back the Electra. Checkmate.
Well, then Zola's going to be drawn, and so the equivalent of wait, no.
Not how it works.
We're out of Healing Rains.
Lightning can strike twice.
Job done. Let the pain speak to me.
That was a surprisingly interesting play there from Patra, actually. When you look at the fact that only, I believe it was 6 healing was gained off of the second healing range due to the Electra effect, there was real consideration to just hold back the Electra to go with the next healing rain, because going up to 20, what was it, 24, 26 is perfectly good enough anyway. You're never going to be dying on the following turn with just this amount of pressure on board. But I guess it's the fact that you get a 3-3 on board with no removal in hand that makes it a lot more tempting of a play. It was close though, I think.
New Zealand need to draw cards. They are really going to struggle to deal with everything that Loosefield has available to him over the next couple turns. So that Acolyte is going to need to do some serious work.
Yeah. And these really are some of the most difficult turns in Queststroke. Is the first turn after Myra's, when you always have 9-10 cards in hand to be working with. And you just have to wonder, what is my game plan here? What am I going for? Do I just launch everything face and try and win the game through burst? Do I try and win board control? How do I try and avoid taking damage myself because I'm dying through to fatigue? How do I meter out my threats here? And I think it was really beautifully done by Hong Kong, where they, in my opinion, correctly realized they need to win the board. They've got to be trading here to get the damage through later on, because they're not just winning through burst. And also played around mind control tech. Just a really nice way of setting up a good board, playing into Fungalmancer next turn, and getting a lot of damage through to face.
As you said, they need to do a lot of maths. They need to work out how they can deal the maximum possible amount of damage in the shortest amount of time. New Zealand picking up the Hex, though. Can't deal with more than one of these minions, which means they have to choose. Is it the Edwin, or is it actually the Vicious Fledgling that poses the greater threat here?
I think he's in a bad enough situation. Oh, sorry, Patra's in a bad enough situation where you can just take. You just have to take the risk. You have to say this Fledgling gets nothing. It's just not going to get the good adaptations. It's just going to get, I don't know, untargetable or something every turn, and it's not going to kill me, because that Edwin will hit you for 6 every turn. You know that as a certainty, but maybe if you get a little bit lucky, the Fledgling won't be quite so devastating.
But the Fledgling is looking to me like it will be quite devastating, especially when buffed by the Fungalmancer. If Hong Kong do hit Wind Fury, this is going to get completely out of control.
Yeah, they just have to do it. Like, they're considering anything else, but Fungalmancer on Fledgling has just been one of the most insanely powerful plays for the longest time. And hey, there you go. That is a whole bunch of nothing on the adaptations.
Oh, you caught it. Untargetable.
Well, I kind of called it. I said something useless like untargetable, but it was the one they actually chose, so it was the least useless out of all of them. But yes, I did call it, of course. Still here, they realized by playing into MCT a little bit, we may as well play into it more and give ourselves the highest chance of not giving them the Vicious Fledgling here, which we really want to keep knocking about.
All right, this is a big old mind control tech. Okay, I was going to say, I'm so surprised they're not attacking first to guarantee this doesn't happen, but maybe they wanted the taunt?
Maybe they wanted the attack face. Like, if they get this, they can just not trade and push the 7 to face to try and close things out. If the odd rogue has to trade, New Zealand are winning.
You can just freeze the vicious fledgling.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's I didn't expect the frog to be the best target there, but maybe that was the game plan all along. Maybe that was the reason they didn't trade it first.
Because if they do trade here, that definitely makes me more suspicious of the not killing off the frog first.
Right.
I don't know, it's close, because then if you kill off the frog and you don't steal the fledgling, I wonder if that gives you more or less chance of having a fledgling not be on their board. But either way, with the attack through the face, I love this play.
So how much damage is available to Hong Kong in the hand? We've got Deckhand, Deadly Poison, and Leroy Jenkins. That's 10. The weapon is another 2, 12, plus everything on the board. 20, it's not lethal. That's not 30.
Surprisingly close, though. Yeah.
24 damage. Not going to do it.
Giving it the real best shot here, but they are obviously going to be realizing they have to trade here, have to eliminate every single attacking minion off this board, or they will die, taking 4 fatigue damage next turn. Not even the meager Glacial Shard can survive, and I think Hong Kong will realize they don't have the ability to clear off everything whilst also setting up lethal on the following turn, especially not after the Saranite Che game comes down for New Zealand. Like, this is just so miserable. They can stay alive technically, but it is by the absolute skin of their teeth. If the chain gang weren't here though, however, this could actually potentially be lethal next turn with the fledgling hitting Wind Fury. Or even if it didn't hit Wind Fury, this is a lot of damage on board. Oof.
Well, Agatha can do some work. Quite a lot of work.
15. Yeah, the damage just isn't there to close out. That is going to be New Zealand taking game 4. There is just nothing that Hong Kong can do here. This was surprisingly close. I think it was a lovely timing on the Myra's Unstable Element and a really good post-Myra's Unstable Element set of plays by Hong Kong here in loose field. But they know here, there's just nothing that can be done.
Well, there you go. Pathra ties things up. It's 2-2. This is the type of series that we want to see in the Hearthstone Global Games Finals. It's all going to come down to the next game, New Zealand or Hong Kong.
For Hong Kong right at the start, this is what you're looking for, because while it is not, I completely agree with you, Mr. Falcone, as good as Wild Pyromancer in this deck to just get that sweeping AoE effect, it's perfectly good enough to start dominating the board. If you can curve Keleseth into Manatide, Chain Gang, whatever else, and use a couple of Lightning Storms along the way to help pull the board in your favor, you can just win board control pretty convincingly.
None will survive.
Yeah, Keleseth into Saranite Chain Gang with Earthshock in hand is a relatively okay start.
The light dims, but we fight.
Righteous Protector into Hero Power, into very cheap Corridor Creeper at some point though. Also a very good start.
Yeah, this is looking like a nice hand for Mage. Finding the level up right at the start is the dream. Exactly what you want against these slightly slower control decks, because it just means that all these 1/1s that are knocking about on board all of a sudden become very, very real threats in their own right. And man, this start though for Hong Kong, while I was saying New Zealand are off to a good start, this is just the dream for Hong Kong. They're dominating the board. The Healing Totem is the perfect role as well to start pulling ahead more on board, and curving into Chain Gang. Like, there's no guarantee that New Zealand are even going to be ahead on board coming into turn 5.
And that's exactly what I was saying just before this game started. That is the potential that Shadowhawk Shaman has. If the Paladin start isn't quite as explosive as it does tend to be, then yeah, Saranite Chain Gang is an awkward body for the Silverhand recruits to deal with.
And so now the slightly weirder plays are going to be being considered by New Zealand. Do they just go Raid Leader here. Trade it in. What can your opponent do to punish that you can't respond with? It's never something you really want to do because you want to play that with a wide board, but it's worth considering. Do they go Stonehill Defender as they were looking at? Do they go Hero Power Blessing of Might? There are a lot of different options here to be looked at.
I must move quickly.
And it seems...
Even just Void Ripper to kill off the healing.
Right.
Phantom.
Well, it seems as though New Zealand don't know what to do, as we are seeing the full extent of the rope here. Sunkeeper Tarim is a snap pick, as it often is in Odd Paladin. It's just premium. Yes, it may have an even cost, but it's one of the best cards in this deck.
New Zealand go for the Blessing of Might and just ship it face. The absolute mad lads.
They know the place. Next turn's looking really awkward for New Zealand, though. Getting past these Sound Knight chain gangs is not going to be an easy feat.
This is what happens when you're playing an odd deck and you hit an even mana curve. Do you want to play a 3-drop and a 1-drop? Not really. It's not like Odd Rogue where you want to press your hero power, but usually you pressed it on turn 2 anyway, so you don't need to do it again later. With this deck, you want to press the hero power every single turn. However, this is a pretty nice consolation price.
What I hadn't realized was how cheap the Corridor Creeper was going to be after making this play. No, this is pretty fantastic. New Zealand back in the driving seat for now, though there is a lightning storm for Hong Kong. Shadowwalk is there, ready to go on turn 9. It's not looking too bad. Do you think Blitzchung... Oh, I was going to say, do you think he needs to play for board, or do you think he needs to start digging through his deck? But okay, can actually hex that Corridor Creeper.
Yeah, I like this. I think it's... so you've seen a Stonehill Defender come down, so maybe there's something a little bit bigger that comes off of that, like a Tyrion. But I think generally it's going to be fairly mid-sized. Obviously, if they have Tarim, they're going to take it, which is a good hex target, but usually the least of your concerns when you've just been Tarimmed.
Right.
So I like just using that there to start winning back the board. You can't afford to use a Lightning Storm there, because that is way more valuable than a hex up against the very wide boards of Odd Paladin.
He's just going to try and work out what is the best thing he can do to get a proper grip on this board. And what does he need to be playing around? Does he need to be playing around Lightning Storm? Does he need to be playing around Mind Control tech?
Well, like the play I'm looking at most heavily is Hero Power Raid Leader on this turn, and then you go Lost in the Jungle Level Up on the next turn. However, against a deck that can so effectively deal with a wide board of 3/3 Silverhand recruits, you really want to be attacking with them on the turn you buff them up.
Agreed.
And I suppose whether he'd gone for Lost in the Jungle or Raid Leader, both of which have been very vulnerable to the Lightning Storm.
Look at this Mana Tide Totem. The buff from the Keleseth makes all of the difference here, as this is going to be a Silverhand Recruit Slayer Totem, while drawing cards at the same time. Just a little bonus.
And it doesn't even die to the Void Ripper.
Reporting for duty.
He's going to go for it anyways, turning this Mana Tide Totem into a Dusk Ball that draws a card. And now for Blitzchung, until he can lead up to that tempo Shadowwalk. For the moment, it's not looking all that great. He just needs to try and stay even on the board, not fall too far behind until he can just let rip. I imagine with 9 mana for 3 6/6s, it's not amazing, but in this matchup, you don't need the full effect of the OTK Shadowwalk combo.
Can this go on? How long can this go on?
So Fungalmancer plus Atris Veteran isn't looking too bad at all here. Buffing up one of these recruits to just equally trade with a Saranai, buffing up the Void Ripper to just value trade, and then the remaining 1/1 can deal nicely with the Mana Tide Totem. Doesn't really put them ahead by much, but it deals with what has become a pretty threatening board from Hong Kong.
Yeah, I can respect that. I think I like any play that doesn't involve Tarim on this turn, because anytime you're playing Tarim, it should be basically winning you the game. It's just the most absurdly powerful swing turn available to you. And so I think waiting for you to have a whole bunch of 1-1s on board, taking it a little bit slower, is a really nice way of playing this for Mage, because he doesn't need to play quickly. He doesn't need to go all in and then be blown out by a Volcano, whereas he could just take it slower, get those hero powers in every single turn, and you will quickly realize the sustainability of Odd Paladin. It just goes on and on and on.
Lightning can strike twice.
Ah, look at that. Hong Kong just doing whatever they can to get themselves onto the board. Even just playing Electra without its ability. But hey, it's a 3-mana 4/4. It seems pretty good here.
This turn looks fairly prescriptive to me of just Raid Leader Hero Power Purifiers Maul.
Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks like a really nice way. I mean, protects you against Hagatha, protects you against Lightning Storm.
It's weak to Volcano.
Really afraid of Volcano. Yeah, that's the thing that could go very wrong there. And that would be bad. That would be the last thing you want to see.
I think that is the way to go. Like, again, you've said it a few times over the course of today, Derek, but you as a Hearthstone player, you have to work around you have to work out what is the correct card to be playing around and which cards can you not afford to play around. And as we can see in this position, the Purifier's Maul does look like it would be winning the game pretty much. Mage is going to go with Tarim though. As you said, some people Tarim needs to be saved for when you're just winning the game outright. But well, hey, it looks like it's winning the game.
Yeah, like it doesn't need to be saved for lethal. It just needs to be saved for a position where it's very, very difficult for your opponent to come back from.
It's this play is much weaker to Hagatha.
It is.
But there's 2 Volcanoes in the deck and only 1 Hagatha.
And also, you had a board that completely died to Hagatha on the last turn on turn 8. I think New Zealand will very correctly have realized there is no way they have Hagatha in hand unless it comes as the one card off the top, which generally you don't play around in Hearthstone unless you're miles and miles ahead. And like you said, Mage can't play around everything here, so I can totally understand the reasoning to play around the Hagatha, to play around Volcano, but not Hagatha here.
Right. That leaves Hong Kong a little bit stuck here. They're just going to drop Shadow Walk. I'm not even sure which battle cries are going to help them out in this position.
Yeah, what, 2 Chain Gangs goes a little bit wider.
I don't think we've seen a mind control tag. I mean, there's a very real chance that New Zealand just have lethal next turn.
How much damage are they looking at? 15 plus the 5, 20?
It is definitely, with level up and Raid Leader, that is going to be lethal, as after what has been an incredibly long series, Mage and New Zealand have done it. They found a way. The odds seem to be stacked against them for a long time, but they found a way to qualify for the Hearthstone Global Games 2018 Finals, eliminating Hong Kong after their incredible run themselves.
And there we have it. Another team joining the top 4 here, as we now have China, Brazil, and New Zealand in the top 4 before we find out who our final semi-finalist will be as the final match of the day later on. But I have to say, very well done to New Zealand there. I like